It's a pleasure to be here. I think I'm disturbing the system. So I just flew in today morning from Delhi to a very warm city, pun intended. And it's been a pleasure to listen to all the talks since the morning. And, I've been reflecting while I've been hearing, and what I picked up a few points from everyone's talk. And when Mr. Shakti was speaking, I think one of the larger ideas is that when we're talking about employability and employment opportunity, what we all need to realize is that it is about nation building today. As Mr. Jayadev was also saying, India's advantage is the demographic dividend. All these young people, but if they are not employable, then that demographic dividend vanishes completely. So when we all work collectively to make people more employable, it's not just for the benefit of the student, the college, and the company. It is an act of nation building. I think the second speaker, Mr. Pandurang Rao, I'm very thankful to him for talking about a lot of uncomfortable things, about how things are not up to the mark. And it's good if someone honestly talks about it, because acknowledging is the problem is the first step towards doing something about it. And I think the aim of this meeting is to think about how to change the problems which we have. Apart from the number of things Mr. Jayadev spoke, I think one thing which I picked up was on fundamentals and being good technologists. Fundamentals are weak. I'm an electrical engineering by training and my bachelor's, and I interview people with electrical engineering degrees who cannot write a Kirchhoff law. Kirchhoff law is taught in class 11th and 12th, and that's a big problem, right? So given that we have all these problems, I'm share my ideas on how we can change India's employability landscape. I've broken this word into parts: employ and ability. Ability is the ability to be able to go into and perform in a job. And employ is the second part of it, where if a person is employable, is he really getting a job? Which is also a very, very important part to make the ecosystem healthy. So this is the idea, in fact, with which Aspiring Minds started. And in going back 5 years back now, 2007, while I was still at MIT, and we read this NASSCOM McKinsey report which said only 25% engineers are employable. And we started asking the question that how do you know that? One. Two, if you know this, if this is the case, how does a student in some city, let's say in Andhra Pradesh or in Bihar or in Madhya Pradesh, in some small town, know whether I am employable or not? And if I am not, what are the gaps? And until that realization is not there, the student or even the college, to some extent, cannot do any correctives. The second question we asked was that if this person is employable, how does the company know that there's an employable person in a small city of the country, given that we have now more than 600,000 engineers graduating every year, and that number also no one knows what that number has become? How do these employable people highlight themselves? And how do companies reach out to them? And that's how the idea of Aspiring Minds came in, that you need a standardized assessment test, like a GRE or a SAT, which can give feedback to students on their employability skills, which is accepted by companies as a way to hire good employable people with all the skills which have been talked about here, and also find these people across the country. So quickly, if I go back, 5 years back around the same time, we started with 4 people in the company. Very lucky to have a mentor from Harvard Business School, Professor Tarun Khanna. And 4 assessment modules, which are English, Logical, Quant, and Computer Programming. 8 colleges around Delhi NCR who took the test called AMCAT. 850 students took AMCAT. And there were around 4 corporations which recognized AMCAT. These were corporations run by friends in local area who had become entrepreneurs and said, okay, let's give it a shot. And 20 jobs were given to these people. So that's where we started, and there was a lot of passion that, there's something which can change India's employability landscape. So what I've been able to do till now we have around 200 employees in the company. 215 was the last count. We have 35 plus modules which have aptitude, domain skills. So domain now is not only programming, but electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, even beyond engineering into finance and accounting, so on and so forth. Personality. There has been a lot of talk about attitude. And attitude, a part of attitude is governed by personality, whereas another is behavioral assessments, where you will check things like adaptability, integrity, and prioritization. There was a talk about are people good managers or not. So the whole idea of having competency-based assessments, because that's the need of today's industry. We're moving ahead of just English, logical, quant, basic aptitude, but having the right attitude in the changing market. 1,700 plus student colleges have now taken AMCAT. More than 1 million students have taken AMCAT. There are 160 plus corporations which accept AMCAT as a criteria, including 6 out of the top 10 IT companies. It is also accepted by companies in the mechanical domain like Tata Motors, Daimler, so on and so forth, and a lot of SMEs. And there have been around 140,000 jobs which have been facilitated through AMCAT, which is people who have taken AMCAT have been placed. So this is where we are today, and we're dedicated to do a lot more. But having said that, these are a lot of numbers. But I think my realization in this 5 years is that we have been able to do very little, right? And the reason for that is that we understand that finally we touch the lives of students for 3 hours when they take the test. After that, we give them a feedback report. I don't even know whether they open and read that feedback report, right? So our impact, we're just providing a platform. It is a technological platform which is standardized, which is world-class, but who can make the real difference to improve employability in the country? And my understanding is that is you people. The so-called placement officers, which I like to call career gurus. I think their role should be seen more as a person who helps the person choose the right career, become employable, has his aspirations measured. And you guys touch them from the time they start in year 1 to all the 4 years of their journey, right? And all these platforms and all the suggestions which are coming, finally it is you who can implement them. So we can do a bit of lip service and give a platform, but the larger responsibility of this nation building is with you, and it's an opportunity, right? So with that idea, I thought I'll share a few things which I think you could do. So the first one is don't start fourth, start first. And let me explain what this rather abstract statement means. Again, going back to the point Mr. Jayadev was making, our national employability report shows that 51% engineers do not know the meaning of words like absurd, generic, seize, admint. Okay, that's fine, that's about English. But if you see 42% engineers cannot divide and multiply decimal numbers. And this is not complicated decimal. This is about, do you know how to shift the point, right? And this is alarming. So, and this is where the point is, you need to start with your student in the first year. You cannot work with these students in the 4th year and then make them employable, right? And this is very interesting because I often myself get invitations to talk to students in colleges. And my criteria to go and talk is that I should have 1st and 2nd year students. Because what do I do with 4th year students? They only have 2-3 questions. Should I do MBA? Should I do a job? How to crack, GRE? Those questions are not interesting. You have to catch them where they are in a formative stage, right? And even if you just speak to them and make them aware about the employment market and what they need to do in 1st year, they'll have a chance to bridge this gap. So that's why I say don't start 4th. Start first. That is the first thing you can do. And you have to continuously identify the gap and bridge it over these 4 years. What from our side, from the side of Aspiring Minds, what we have got for this is that we've made it in every year we have tried to understand what is required to be assessed for the students. So the first year you have your English, logical, quant, basic typing. There are people who can't even type, computer fundamentals. Today, if someone is a mechanical, electrical, any engineer, everyone needs to know how to operate a computer, use an Excel, use Microsoft Word, so on and so forth. Attention to detail. Go on to your 2nd year, you need to relook at these things, are these guys bridge the gap? So probably you identified the gaps in this area in the 1st year, and then bridge them, and then see have they really bridged the gap. Then you look at things like Excel skills, personality, which are additional in the 2nd year, and the person is stepping in engineering now. Going to 3rd year, the domain becomes very important, which is your computer programming, electrical, engineering, so on and so forth, right? Again, the person should have some time to bridge the gap there. A very interesting product which we have is called Swar. And again, it has been a lot talked about the importance of spoken English. right? So what is Swar? Swar is a voice product where you dial in a number and you are asked to listen to certain things and speak certain things, on basis of which it checks both, can you listen and comprehend English? Do you speak with the right fluency, right pronunciation, so on and so forth. Now today English, fortunately or unfortunately, has become extremely important for any job. 5 to 10 years back, they would think that this is needed just for a BPO. But today, the IT services, IT product companies need it, because all of these consumers are, all of the consumers are from the Western countries and they have to face a client. So Swar is, and again, you have to start in third year. If you know in the fourth year, and in fact, someone suggested to me when I made this presentation last time that you should start it in the first year. We cannot teach English in even 1 year. And finally, you go to something like business English, again, changing needs of industry. Do you use the right parlance? Java, C++, SQL, things like behavioral assessments, which I was talking about, checking adaptability, checking integrity, prioritization, so on and so forth. So you have to see it in a holistic way, and these skills have to be developed over years. But the mantra is to start first. Don't start fourth. You've already lost the race if you're starting with the student in the fourth year. There's an abstract statement here, but an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. And let me explain to you why I put it here. This is again about, I'm just looking at a complementary spin to what Mr. Jaydev was talking about, having technologists and fundamentals being strong. So there are these large companies and there are these small and medium-sized enterprises which employ 60 million people today in India. At least 10% of them are in IT engineering. That means there's a sizable number of people which will be hired by these SMEs. If I just look at IT SMEs, they are happy to hire a person if you can write 20 lines of code for a given problem. Unfortunately, the reality is, if you look at our National Employability Report and many other reports, that when we looked at skills, out of 100, there are 3 students who can do this. Right? And this is where the bridging has to happen. We've been talked a lot about personality enhancement, so on and so forth. But if someone can write 20 lines of correct code for 2 problems, I can assure you SMEs will line up on your campus to hire. And technology companies which do not have, so there are 2 kinds. SMEs, because they don't have training infrastructure, so they want person to start on the job on the first day. And then high technology companies who would want people already have these skills. Quickly, what we have done in this area is that we've recently launched a product called SimProg, which is a simulated computer programming test, where the person has to actually write a program for a given problem. And it's a complete programming environment. He can compile, debug, recompile. Basis it, we can tell him whether it was right or wrong, but go beyond it and say that, if it was wrong, did it not do the basic test cases right, or it had complicated errors, what kind of errors did it have, did it miss corner cases, so the student know what he's doing wrong, so on and so forth. And even tell him the complexity of the code, which something like an IT product company looks at, how efficient the code is. So it's something, if companies are looking for testing programming at second year, third year, something like SimProg could help to see where the student stands and give students some feedback on what is programming skills. And I assure you, if he or she can write 20 lines, this is not a rhetorical statement. There are many companies who are ready to hire him today, him or her. The third mantra, which is more of when I talked about it internally in my company, they said it's a controversial one, you shouldn't talk about it, but I said I'll talk about it. So having a company at your campus is not as important as getting your students placed. The world is changing. Campus placements, company physically coming to your campus, doing the placements, this is going to change. And why? There are more than 2,500 engineering colleges, probably more than 3,000. No one knows the number. Every day I read a different number. No top company visits more than 700 colleges, right? SMEs cannot. They don't have the infrastructure to visit colleges. So the reality is that every college will not be visited by the company. The reality also is that it's not efficient, right? So you have to make it efficient for the company. One of the things which I think is most problematic is that whenever you approach a company, you call and say that, sir, campus aa jaiye, right? That is not possible for a lot of companies. So you have to see how to make it efficient for the company. Can you highlight your employable students to them and say we can send these students to your company to take the interview, so on and so forth. But getting the company at your at campus, it will change. If you go to the West today, people are even making courses available online. Stanford, MIT are doing classes which are online. And again, as per the example, they are studying from home now, right? So this hiring will also happen from home to some extent. We have to open up to this idea, put students on platforms, and every time you call a company, think, how can I make it efficient for them and efficient for me? Because coming to your campus, sifting through 300 students is probably not the most efficient way this will happen. So my thought here is that you should use platforms which can make this easier, get it on the internet, send students to corporates for interviews, make it easier for them, highlight your employable students, involve your students in making those calls. They cannot be a better testimony of your student by the student. They can hear what the student is saying. And capture the long tail of SMEs, which is out there. Apart from the large companies, a lot of hiring will happen with SMEs. They don't hire as many freshers today because they don't get quality. But if you can get those 20 lines of code written, they will queue, right? And build the local ecosystem. So these are my thoughts. I think I'm summarizing it this way, that where are we today? We have more than 6 lakh colleges, 6 lakh engineering students who graduate every year, more than 2,500 plus colleges, around 1 lakh employable out of these. And I don't even think all who are employable get a job, because of course companies don't visit beyond the top 750 or 1,000, and our study shows that at least 50% of employable people are beyond the top 750 colleges. And where we should be. So one thing is that we don't need to increase colleges. We have enough colleges, engineering colleges in the country. We are at least producing more than 4 times engineers than the United States of America produces, right? We're very much ahead of the curve, and that's good because today we have a capacity. Otherwise, we may run into the China-like problem. But now make them employable. So, invest in quality and get more and more of these employable. And the vision is that all who are employable should get a job. And I think that can be a healthy ecosystem.